Hey, what's up, everyone? It's your man, Zittel. Just got here at the MGM Grand, set for a busy day on fight day for Benavidez versus Ramirez. But first, let's get into Inoue Nakatani. I made sure to stay up and do a live for that fight. And let's start by giving credit to Naoya, the monster Inoue, one of the greatest fighters that ever lived in these bantamweight weight classes, whether it's 118, 122, really any weight class he's competed at. But yeah, he got the job done. This was supposed to be his coronation, and he is indeed coronated as the greatest fighter from Japan of all time. I don't have as deep a knowledge of the history of the sport in Japan like someone like my man Brendan Taylor, True School Sports, who spent a lot of years in that, or not, it's a lot of months in that country. But I know pretty much the consensus was fighting Harada was the all-time best from Japan. And, you know, I imagine that Inoue has usurped him in that spot and is one of the best fighters of his era, and definitely one of the great 122 pounders in the history of boxing. So let's talk about the fight. Inoue was forced to be by far the most patient version of himself that we've ever seen. And he wisely was fighting a little bit. He fought patiently against Alan Picasso, and that was a good tune-up, a good warm-up for this performance. He was fighting a guy who, to me, filled out really nicely in his second fight at 122. Definitely looked like the bigger man, is the 5 years younger man, and was disciplined and patient, Nakatani was, with his length. And if you would have told me he would fight this way heading in, I would say that was very smart, because at some point, Inoue, if he's the same Inoue he always is gonna want to be spectacular. He's gonna press and push for something that can leave him open to be hit with a big shot, like he has been early in other fights. And sometimes that did happen, but Inoue at 33, you know, one of the most athletic fighters of the last several years, one of the most athletic fighters even at 33, still in boxing, he was able to get away with certain times with his chin exposed, and his chin was in precarious positions throughout this fight whenever they opened up and exchanged. But more on that later, on how he overcame that and turned it into offense. But his reflexes were still good enough at 33 to make Nakatani miss his counter left hands in those sequences, in those exchanges. And Nakatani ultimately wasn't able to get a lot done in the first 6 rounds. Not a lot happened in the first 6 rounds. It was a feint fest. It was a positioning fest. A lot of fencing by both fighters, the southpaw Nakatani and Inoue. The orthodox fighter, Inoue, of course. And Inoue was very respectful, wisely, of the length, the disciplined length in this fight by Nakatani and the punching power of Nakatani. So Inoue could only get but so aggressive in spots. One thing that let Nakatani down in this fight is he doesn't have an authoritative jab. He has a jab that's a rangefinder to inevitably set up the money shot, the left hand. He has a good uppercut. He landed that right uppercut, I want to say, in the 8th or so. And then he began to put combinations together and had his best rounds in 9 and 10. And it looked like Inoue was starting to fade. And his hands weren't coming back on defense as good. His punches were actually losing a little steam, something I've never seen from him before. It looked like age was showing up a little bit. But then Inoue, he answered the call in the 11th round. He had a big 11th round and won the 12th too. And earlier about leaving his chin in precarious positions, there was a few times he had both hands down and his chin out. And Inoue, who has great hand speed, great punching power, can throw every punch in the book, body, head, both hands. His one flaw is the way he leaves his chin upright sometimes. And there was a few times down the stretch of the fight, again, both hands down, chin up in the exchanges, but because of his reflexes, he gets away with that. And in the 11th round, he did a few times throughout the fight, he would throw a right hand and then just stay in that position, even though he was out of position, but he didn't want to lose ground. He didn't want to lose real estate and take a step out and reset, so he'd have to work all over again to get into punching range. So he'd miss the first right hand and then double it up and land the second one. And then in the 11th, he did that look again, kind of missed with both right hands, and then ducked underneath beautifully 2 or 3 shots by Nakatani, and then came up with a right uppercut. And that was the most either fighter got hurt in this whole fight, was in that sequence right there. And that's what sealed him the fight. And actually, he needed that, because I thought he was a little more comfortably ahead than the judges wound up having him. I thought he won this fight 9 rounds to 3. They had it 8-4, 7-5 on the cards. So that little 2-round closing by Inoue was important, or else he might have gotten a draw, a majority draw against Nakatani. But yeah, Nakatani, he was putting it together in 9 and 10, had some momentum, and then Inoue took the play away from him. So I understand it was a high stakes, high level fight. I even think Inoue, it kind of reminded me of Floyd Mayweather when he was coming to the ring for Pacquiao. So these are guys that always expect to win, that believe they're the best, but they're human. He even felt some of the pressure of this moment, I believe. You know, I think he was even a little tense, and that might have been why he got a little tired late in the fight. But I understand it was a high-level fight of feints and positioning, and the reason why Inoue had to be not as spectacular as he normally is against a long, disciplined puncher. But the fight didn't live up to the hype for me. I called it the Japanese Leonard Hearns. It wasn't that. I said this is the best matchup at 122 since Vasquez Marquez, and before it Morales Barrera at 1 back in 2000. And that fight didn't reach anywhere close to that. But one thing I'm grateful for the fight for is I just feel like here we go again, like Shakur Tiafimo, Usyk, Fury, both fights, Bivol, Beterbiev, both fights, even Canelo Crawford. And I think they were all decent to good fights in different degrees with an exceptional performance here and there, but from one fighter, not both, to produce an actual great fight. But I said on Twitter, I said, I got news for you, none of these are great fights. I think the closest to being a great fight out of all those fights I mentioned was the first Usyk Fury fight. It had a crescendo, it had a peak. It had Usyk 40 pounds lighter dropping Fury. Okay, so if you want to argue any of them are a great fight, that's fine. And Crawford had a hell of a performance against Canelo. You know, Inoue had to fight at a very patient, intelligent, high level to get the job done against a younger, taller, bigger guy overall. I understand that Shakur had a mastery of distance. Beterbiev and Bivol fought at an extremely high level in the light heavyweight division, and you know, Fury, Usyk as well. A lot of craftsmanship, but the two are not mutually exclusive. When it's De La Hoya Mosley won, when it's Leonard Hearns won, when it's Ali Frazier won, when it's James Toney and Mike McCallum, when it's Fernando Vargas and Tito Trinidad, when, you know, the list goes on, Pacquiao and Marquez 4, Canelo Golovkin too even. There is such a thing as the fight being fought at the highest level and still producing an overall great, not good, not pretty good, not tense, not just high level, great fight. And to me, none of those fights, Beterbiev Bivol 2 had ebbs and flows. It was a good fight. Usyk Fury 1, closest one you could argue to a great fight. And like I said, Crawford and Shakur did it, and in a way, all operated at very high skill levels to get the job done at the highest level and deserve credit for it. But none of them, to me, were great fights. And this wasn't a great fight. This fight was a letdown. This fight was anticlimactic and underwhelming, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So that's ultimately how I see it. You know, I give Inoue credit. He's a special fighter. But I thought his fight last year with Ramon Cardenas was great. He got dropped, he gets up, he gets the stoppage. That was a great fight for what it was worth. Not contested at as high a skill level as an opponent against Nakatani, but a great fight. So the first 6 rounds, almost no punches of consequence landed. Inoue, eventually, he kept trying to do a sweeping right hand of the body off the jab or a straight right hand of the body off the jab and was falling short. Nakatani was disciplined and making him fight honest on the outside, not get too zealous. That's a credit to his skills. And then eventually Inoue out-jabbed the taller man and got things going a little bit there. And then the few times Nakatani would stay in close, Inoue would try to explode, and with some combinations, he got enough done. He got the job done. I thought he won 9 rounds to 3. But overall, as a fight, I thought it was, underwhelming and anticlimactic. But hey, that's that. Inoue, maybe he moves to the featherweight division now. It's all house money from here. He's already cemented himself and his legacy. So if one of the featherweights who are younger and bigger than him get him, it's no shame there. It's no big deal. But I do think that may very well happen if he continues on at featherweight. He is 33 and getting older. He's going to be in his 5th weight class at that point. But I give him credit. It's just, nobody called De La Hoya to Trinidad, oh, but it was so high level. I mean, Trinidad was applying the kind of pressure that eventually a year later would make him pound for pound #1. Oscar boxed one of the most beautiful fights of his life. And, you know, don't just give me that he ran the last couple of rounds bullshit, because anyway you put, okay, for about 3 rounds, no punches were being landed by Oscar. No punches were landed in 6 rounds by both fighters in this fight. And I'm just saying, the standard of thing, Morales Barrera too had more action than this. That was between 2 pound-for-pound greats fighting for the lineal featherweight title, and people said that was underwhelming, that was disappointing. So, I don't know. I'm being an old grandpa about it, they say, and maybe they're right. But I'm just old enough to remember truly great fights, and while this one was a high-level fight, and it was a tense fight, and it was a high-stakes fight, and a skill fight, it wasn't a great fight. But props to Naoya Inoue. Let's see what we get tonight in Vegas. This too, sometimes it's just about winning and then moving on to the next, and then you could look spectacular and get a knockout in your next fight. This fight was just about get the job done, win. It was the biggest fight in Japan's history. Couldn't mess around with a guy like Nakatani, and Inoue was smart. He got the job done, and that is the most important thing. I think going forward, though, the biggest fight for him over there would be Bam Rodriguez moving up. That's a huge little man fight, but I think maybe someone, if Carrington could win a unification and vault himself to the top of the heap of the featherweight division, that becomes his Prince Nassim Hamed, Kevin Kelly. If he's looking for that thing, if he's still interested in having a signature moment in the United States, that would fit the bill, you know. So, but that would require Carrington to put some work in, get a unification, elevate himself to the top of the heap, make it worth Inoue's while at Madison Square Garden, something like that. But over in Japan, Bam Rodriguez jumping up a couple weight classes is probably the biggest fight. So that's it, and that's all. Peace.